All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Jackson, and I am the founder of Black and National Parks Week, also Black and National Parks. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is April 24th, Wednesday, 2024. This is our interview for my story project, which was created in 2021. And the week itself started in August of 2020. So we have a new guest for this month, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with our special guest. And with that, just as a reminder, there are more videos that I've recorded, so please check out my YouTube channel for those. I will be adding more as the months go on, just because I have a bunch of new things happening. So I'm kind of resetting, but also want to make sure that people have a chance to view um, outside of the Instagram lives, other interviews that I've done. So be on the lookout for those. Also, it is National Park Week. I believe this is day 5, Workforce Wednesday. So feel free to check out National Park Week hashtag um, as well as National Park Service's website for more information and details on how to participate and be engaged with the week itself. So without further ado, I will like to introduce our guest, Heather Brown. If you would like to come off camera and unmute yourself and introduce yourself. So where you're from, your background, and how you how you found out essentially about Black and National Parks.
Sure. Hi, I'm Heather Brown. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. Lived there for most of my life from when I was 5 years old until I left for college. I currently live in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, just south of Shenandoah National Park near Charlottesville. I am a corporate attorney in telecom. I've been in telecom for over 25 years. And I have been kind of an outdoor park adventurer since as long as I can remember as a child. And found out about Black in National Park, Nicole's organization, just a few months ago. Just doing some research for a company I've started, just seeing what Black people are doing in nature and stumbled across her company.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And I'm so happy to have you here with me. So let's get started with our interview slash conversation. What's your earliest memories, childhood memories of being outdoors and in nature?
As long as I can remember, to be honest. Growing up in Denver, we were always outside, whether it was playing or doing activities in the city parks with my brothers. We also would go skiing in the mountains, which the closest ski resort was about 45 minutes away. So it felt like we were in the mountains. At least every weekend, we would go camping with friends. We owned property in the mountains that we would explore on. I guess now we call it hiking. With back then, it was just running through the woods with my brothers, building teepees. But yeah, as long as I can remember, just being outside was a big part of my life.
Did you have a favorite thing that you did when you were outside, or was it kind of just a little bit of everything, or just you were curious and free flowing with your energy and just focus on being a kid?
A lot of focused on being a kid, just kids. We did a lot of different things from, playing games to riding our big wheels down the street to riding our bikes around the neighborhood to building snow forts and blizzards and throwing snowballs at each other. And it just depended on the season and the level of energy we had that day. But I felt like we were always outside and had to come in when the street lights came on.
So, what was your perception of parks, nature, outdoors? Did it feel like a scary space to be in? Did it feel like an inspiring space, to be creative, to be curious?
It's a great question. I feel like because I grew up with it, it was just part of my life. And it wasn't until I got older and I realized that it was kind of an anomaly to be Black and feel that way about being outside, especially growing up around other Black people in Denver that were doing the things I did. I didn't really have a sense that that's not
Mhm.
what Black people did. So when I came out east for school, it was kind of weird to me that, people weren't skiing or hiking and they're like, Black people ski? It's like, yeah, like Black people hike? It's like, yeah, like we're all the ways in the mountains all the time in Denver. Black people live in Denver. It was like weird questions like that where it kind of was like, oh wow, I didn't realize what was natural is kind of not natural
Mhm.
for other people. So I had an early start in that regard, and which I think kind of advanced my adulthood adventurism
Mhm.
to be at the level it is now, because I
Mhm.
never had that fear.
So growing up with siblings, your parents, did they encourage you to go outdoors? Was it something they enjoyed as well and gave you exposure to?
Yes, they enjoyed the outdoors so much in the mountains that our yard was kind of crafted to be like the mountains, like landscape. My mom had trees brought in from the mountains, the aspen trees, the cottonwood. So even just being in the suburbs, well, we were in suburbs, but Denver's kind of one big suburb, felt
Mhm.
like suburbia, but our
Yeah.
house in itself was a very outdoorsy type place, so that when we weren't either at the city parks or in the mountains or just at home in our yard, it felt like you're in an outdoor oasis.
So do you have I guess the earliest memory of traveling somewhere to be in nature, not national parks, but just in general?
Traveling to be in nature, definitely learning how to ski when I was 6 years
Hmm.
old. Going to the mountains, like I said, every weekend. It was just part of what we did. Um,
Hmm.
didn't really feel like travel because it, was 45 minutes away, but that was kind of like the entry to leaving the neighborhood, leaving the city parks into something bigger.
Yeah. So has that did that change your perspective when you traveled to places outside of Colorado?
No. Well, just that it was easy, or like, what do you mean? Just,
Um, yeah, maybe like if it was challenging, if it was, the unknown of, what other nature outside of, what
yeah.
you were used to look like.
I mean, I think when you expose at such a young age,
Hmm.
to something like skiing, which is outdoors, it's adventurous. There's an element of danger that I never really appreciated till I got older and run into
Hmm.
people that are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you do that. It's so scary." It's like, what's scary about it? But
Yeah.
the outdoors, I think people have that similar reaction. So yeah, growing up doing something to me that was as simple as skiing, that then traveling to other places didn't seem scary. It seemed
Yeah.
like the next step, like what else is out there, just kind of being curious, exploring. We did family trips within the state of Colorado because it's
Mhm.
so big, not realizing that people that live there weren't even doing this. There's,
Mhm.
state parks in the state that were national parks rather, that were my first national parks I ever
Yeah.
visited. And it wasn't until actually looking back onto this project where it's like, oh wow, yeah, I went there and I went there and I went there. And there most of them were as a child,
Right.
Colorado state parks, national
Yeah,
park.
it's interesting how that shows up when you get older of like, oh, you've been there so many times and it doesn't have that officialness to it. You're
Mhm.
just like, oh, it's part of my backyard, my neighborhood, without it feeling like, oh, this is actually, a
A
government
visit, right?
entity and, has a special name and all of those things, until you get older and you realize you do have that connection.
Right,
Even though
yeah,
you feel disconnected, you're like, oh, I've had this connection this whole time.
exactly.
Um, were any of your nature outings, I guess, in this is specific to um, more so adventuring? Has any of that put you in a interesting, I guess, I don't know if I'm asking this in the right way, but have you ever been put in a position where you had to like, you've gone through something challenging, but like you've learned something really profound from it, like in being in the outdoors,
As an adult,
as any
as
time that
any
you can
age.
remember,
Something profound that can you
has transformed, I guess, the way you look at life or the way you look at yourself, kind of like life lessons from being in the outdoors. Have you had any of those experiences?
One experience that I can think of that was fairly recent,
Hmm.
4 years ago, did backpacking trip, and I hike and backpack. Not well, I hike regularly. Backpacking, I think at the time it was my third backpacking trip. Yosemite Park, part of the experience was to reach the top of Half Dome, which
Hmm.
is a big granite structure in Yosemite, kind of iconic.
Yeah.
You see in all the
And
pictures.
it's like, and it's an incline, like it's
It,
incline. It's
it's
not,
inclined, yeah.
yeah.
And
It's, ooh,
so
yeah.
I remember when I signed up for the trip, a friend of mine, I was like, yeah, I'm going to Yosemite, going backpacking, and I'm climbing Half Dome. She's like, you're doing what? I was like, I'm climbing Half Dome. It's like, you're not afraid? It's like afraid of what? She's like, wow, you're so brave. I would be terrified. It's like, huh,
Hmm.
I need to look into this a little bit more. So I look into it and I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, these cables, you got to go up. All right, so arm strength. Hey, what's going on? Oh, okay, you're not clipped in. Interesting. Huh. Look a little deeper. Oh, wow, it's like almost vertical. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, I'm still not scared. I got this. I'll train, I'll get ready, do the whole thing. So the backpacking part comes. We're backpacking,
Hmm.
hiking through Yosemite, which isn't an easy part to hike. But we did it over 4 days, so it's kind of spread out. All day backpacking from our campsite to the base of Half Dome where we set up
Hmm.
camp, relax for that day. And it's like, oh, we're gonna do the sunset hikes. Like, oh my gosh, more hiking. So we did the sunset up to the cables, which
Hmm.
again, just all uphill. On that hike, I started to experience like IT band flare up. So my knee was really bothering me. It was like painful and it was frustrating. And I was getting mad at myself that like, why didn't I foresee this happening?
Yeah.
I was prepared for downhill knee pain, not uphill knee pain.
Right.
It's kind of
Hmm.
a new thing, but I overcame it, got to the cables, got my gloves ready, climbing up, doing the steps, and it's like, oh wow, this isn't, you know, it's not scary, but it's,
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of heights. So for me, it was just, you train for this, you got this. 3/4 of the way up. I'm fairly short. I'm only 5'3".
Hmm.
There's a big step I had to climb. And
Hmm.
fatigue from the day, I think, set in, probably lack of electrolytes, other things, I don't know. But my hips started to cramp up. So when you raise your leg to take a big step, I couldn't raise it because my hip cramped.
Wow.
And then my other leg hip cramp on that one too. So I'm standing there on the cables, like
Hmm.
vertical-ish point, just like what now? Like
Yeah.
what do I do? So I was with the guide who helped, get the cramps out of my legs. I was able to continue on, make it to the top, made it down, made it out. But upon
Hmm.
reflection of all that, it was like, wow, like that was way more than I was expecting. I was scared for probably the first time, being an outdoors person,
Hmm.
where fear like set in when I'm there, just like I don't know what to do next. And my
Yeah.
guide was like, whatever you do, don't look down. And I was like, why? Don't tell me not to do something. Because
Yeah,
then
because you're like, I'm gonna do it.
it's like, what's the big deal? Yeah, I look down and it's just like, oh my gosh, okay, I get I get the situation, the gravity of the situation now. But what did it teach me? That I can do hard things.
Mm.
Um, that perseverance, kind of resetting, like not getting too stressed out about situations. I'm a fairly even-keeled person anyway, so that comes naturally. But there could have been just a moment of panic. There was a moment of panic, but the way I handled it was to just kind of refocus, uh focus on my goal, which I worked hard for, which was to get to the top, right? To
Hmm.
get to the top, say I did it,
Yeah.
um, and I was able to do that. It was very emotional. Um, the whole trip, just the
Mm.
physicality of
Hmm.
4 days of just hardcore backpacking and even
Yeah.
hardcore hiking had its toll. So when I finished, those last steps, the last day coming up at I think it's called Observation Point in Yosemite, wherever we're coming up the last hill, it just felt like you're hiking for hours and hours on
Yeah.
end with the
And
sun.
it's a space to come to just release all of that.
It just came all out.
You're literally just like,
It's
just
like,
let it all go.
yeah, that was just like, wow. And like I said, I'm not super emotional generally, but that
Hmm.
was just a feeling that it just like it just overcame me. And so
Mm.
as far as experiences go that are kind of profound, I can say
Yeah.
that that's probably one of the biggest ones that kind of led me to like, okay, so like, what do I do next? Right? What's
Hmm.
what's more iconic than that can not necessarily create the same emotions per se, because I
Yeah.
want to go through the fear and all this, the ups and downs of that whole trip. That was just a lot, but to
Hmm.
kind of keep pushing myself to be like, what can I do that can keep me challenged,
Yeah.
physically and mentally?
Mhm. I love that. And I love that we can push ourselves in that way, even though it might feel uncomfortable in the beginning. But knowing enough of yourself to be like, you know what? I may have to pull back a little bit, but I can keep going. Like the pacing really does help
Yeah, just
in those
being, and I
situations.
feel that the
Yeah.
time of day that we went, there's no pressure to like go, 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 because we were
Right.
the last
Hmm.
group up, it was sunset. And that probably helped my mental
Yeah.
state just to be like, okay, regroup.
Hmm. Right.
You're not going down. And if you are, you're not going down the way that is scary.
Yeah.
You're going to go down the safe way.
So, um, national parks.
Mhm.
You mentioned earlier that you um, visited your first national parks in Colorado. So can you share a little bit about that and how you found out about national parks and what they were?
Yeah. So, at the time, I didn't know I was in a national park. It was a family
Hmm.
trip, our Colorado family trip. I don't remember how old I was, but probably younger than 10. And we visited the Great Sand Dunes and Mesa Verde.
Nice. Hmm.
And I believe we also might have gone to Rocky Mountain National Park
Hmm.
as well. And so I remember the Mesa Verde and Sand Dunes distinctively because of how distinctive they are.
Yeah.
Just um, feeling like you're not even, well, the sand dunes, you feel like you're not even in Colorado
Yeah.
anymore. Just
Right.
mounds of sand everywhere that were super hot. I remember that. The Mesa Verde, just the history of
Hmm.
those cliffs and the little uh, people that lived there,
Yeah.
years ago, and the history. Um, so again, I didn't know at the time there were national parks.
Hmm.
Later in my childhood, we did go to Yosemite. So kind of has like one of my favorite probably national parks is Yosemite, just the beauty of it. So
Yeah.
I think becoming an adult and remembering Yosemite specifically was like, where can I find more parks like,
Yeah.
right? I want to go back. I want to bring my kids there, which I did.
Hmm.
But then it became like, oh, like look at all these other ones. Grand Canyon, there's so many national parks. But that kind of started my intrigue was uh knowing about national parks was when we went to Yosemite when I was an older child.
So were you taking photos? Like what were you keeping as far as, having memories of those places and um the times that you visited? Were they through photos? Were they through video?
From a child,
Hmm.
I think it's just memories because this was in 70s and early 80s,
Hmm.
uh, where there probably are photos somewhere in my family of the
Hmm.
trips, but just the memories of what you're seeing, like it just
Yeah.
really creates an impact on my brain,
Hmm.
where I can still almost like feel the burning sand under my feet and, imagine this, seeing the cliff
Yeah.
dwellings in Mesa Verde and smelling the air in Yosemite being so fresh that
Mhm.
um, Yosemite, there might have been pictures, but the other two, I don't ever recall seeing a picture of myself or them from those experiences.
Yeah, that's something I think about often. And being an environmental educator, like I've been in so many spaces where I'm facilitating programs and even not even just national parks, but just being outdoors where I don't have pictures of myself. I'm like,
Right.
I remember doing the things and, the programs and everything, but then I look back on it and I'm like, oh, people were taking photos and doing all this stuff, but like I wasn't in any of them. So I essentially, this is another reason why I wanted to do the story project because, to be able to have Black people share their experiences, but also a reminder, to take more photos, to take video, like to capture those moments, also almost as if it's like kind of a time capsule to be able
Yeah.
to look back on because that's not something I ever saw growing up or even reading like in books, going to the library of just like, oh, there's Black people, there's Black families, you know, going to these places and really like enjoying them, versus feeling like, you know, you can't go outdoors. It's scary. Like that's stuff that I recall
Right.
hearing growing up, and you know, white people do that. Like that's not something you would be interested in because, you know, all of this fear that comes with it. So it's just like, well, no, like I've been in nature, I've experienced nature, and I know what it does for my mind, body, and soul. And really, like you were saying, wanting more of that. But then if you're the only one who wants
Right.
more
If
of
you're the only
that, then
one,
like how do you make, yeah,
it just
how do
feels
you make that
awkward.
connection?
Mhm.
So I was just always seeking more stories and like wanting to hear from more people who were just like, yeah, I've done this thing. It might have just been me, but like it was something I was interested in or wanted to learn more about. And you know, different forms of capturing those moments is just as fascinating. But then also the interest, like, you know, Black people that like geology or herpetology or birds. Like I'm a birder, so like
Right.
being able to go to those places and really enjoy the landscapes, the nature, the wildlife, in different ways through our culture, through our communities, without it feeling like there's this, you know, isolation that
Right.
comes with it. Like it really
Mhm.
helps us connect to each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think as an adult, I take tons of pictures, probably way more
Hmm.
pictures than I need to. Um, but to your point, like it could just be because there was a lack of that growing up, and I did experience so many things that I don't have pictures or memories to go
Hmm.
back to and be like, oh, I remember back when I was 8, and
Yeah.
I'm just remembering from my brain. So,
Hmm.
as an adult, I
Yeah.
notoriously take tons of pictures wherever I go.
Yeah. And I love that. I don't know if you get this feeling, but like even those memories, even if you haven't like taken a photo or a video, to be able to go back to it in your mind is just as comforting because
Yeah,
you're like, ah, I know this happened. I know the feeling I got from it. And it really does help you get through other hurdles in life to just know that like there was a time where there was joy and awe and like
exactly.
curiosity that it's
Exactly.
just like it re-centers you.
Yeah, it's definitely comfort zone.
Hmm. Have you created a checklist for the national parks that you've visited? And um, do you know the number? Like, have you
Yeah,
counted
I
how many
actually, for
total?
this project, I was like, I wonder how many I
Yay.
had. So I went and looked up all of the national parks because I felt like I had been to more than I had. I thought my
Yeah.
percentage would be higher than it was because I honestly didn't know how many
Hmm.
national parks there were, and there's quite a few. But I have visited 12, which I feel like is a
Wow.
pretty good number.
Yeah,
I
that's
visited
awesome.
12, and it will be 13 starting next month. I'll be going to Acadia National Park to do
In Maine,
in
are
Maine.
you gonna bird? You should go birding.
You know what? I live in the mountains and there's birds everywhere here.
Oh
And
my goodness,
I'm
that's
all
so
like, I
exciting.
wonder what kind of bird that is.
Hmm.
They're singing their songs, and I feel like I just don't have the brain capacity anymore to be like remembering it. And so it's kind of like flowers are like that too. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my, so many
Yeah.
beautiful flowers. Like, oh, what flower is that? It's like, I honestly,
Right.
my brain cannot retain that information. So I rely on
Don't
people like
feel
you.
bad.
I'll travel
I'm
with you
still
and you can tell
learning.
me about what all the birds are.
Right.
You're
No,
like,
you're
okay.
good. Like,
If it's not
and I
red and the
love,
cardinal, I have no idea. Or a robin, I'm like, or oh, woodpecker. I know woodpecker. Besides that, it's like,
I
um,
think I've learned more about birds through my experiences, just being like observant, not even like
okay,
going to a guide and like, I don't know, that bothers me. But like, I'm learning something from a book, like that's stressful to me. Like, I'd rather like, let's go to the spot where they hang out and like I can watch them and like pick up on their, you know, behaviors and like listen to them and like them in their element. And I feel like the information sticks better with
yeah,
those
I
experiences
agree.
versus like
Yeah,
I'm sitting
I'm
and
gonna
reading
go
a
learn
book.
about birds
Like,
today.
right. So it's like, no. So I feel like I've been birding for about 15 years,
Okay.
but I'm still like there's still so much to learn. Like I think it's close to 10,000 species in the world. So like I will never know every single bird in my lifetime, but like I always base it off of experiences that I've had in the outdoors is how I remember a specific bird, or like I know what to look forward to if I go to a
Okay.
place of like, oh, okay, there, are going to be certain birds migrating through this state or
Uh-huh.
this region, that I can look out for, but then also just observing their behavior. And it's the same with wildlife, which brings me to my next question. What have been some awesome wildlife encounters with your national park visits?
So when I was backpacking in the Smokies last year, I was
Ooh.
actually ready for the bears. I was like, bring those bears on. Like, I want to see some bears. And
Mm-hmm.
so on the trail, we're doing the stick thing, the clap, clap, clap.
Yep.
So there were
Mm-hmm.
no bears on the trail. But we get to our campsite and there's, bears kind of walking around. We're like, oh, bears. And then it's kind of like, oh, should we be like running to see these bears or not? But there's some other people at our campsite. It's like, oh, they'll go away very easily. And they just went like, and bears went, took off
Oh,
running. So all you
wow.
have to do is like clap or
That's
be
so
like, go away, bear.
interesting.
And they go away. So I think any national parks, I don't think in Shenandoah I've seen any bears. I'm pretty sure the Smokies was it. Although one of the girls I was hiking with in Yosemite had a bear
Mhm.
actually like fell asleep. She was there a day early for the trip, and I think she was sitting on a lounger chair
Mhm.
at a campsite and had fallen asleep and woke up, and her husband was like, there's like a bear like going through their knapsack right next to them or something like that. So not that close, but yeah, the Smokies, there's bears every, I think it's the highest population of bears in a national park, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
did so I mentioned the bear that we almost hit on Skyline Drive in Shenandoah, but I don't think when I went to the Smokies, I think it was no, it wasn't the Smokies. That was Shannon. No, that was the Smokies. We saw a red fox. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
We were driving. I couldn't, I'm the person to yell like, "Oh my gosh, there's an awesome like get out of the car." I can't do that. So, so I just was like
Actually,
taking snapshot of it in my head.
Not Yosemite, Yellowstone. So Yellowstone's notorious for the animals, right? Like that's why
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
go. And having not experienced that level of like animal excitement, it was kind of like I didn't know what to expect. So we're driving around, all of a sudden we pull to the side of the road, get out, shh, be quiet, run, run, run. It's like what's everybody looking at?
Right.
It's like here's
Oh
some
my
binoculars,
goodness.
like way over there.
Right.
1,000
Yeah.
yards away. See the grizzly bear and her cubs. And it's like, oh wow. And you see it, it's very cool, but it's kind of like, how did anybody see that?
Right. It's like
Um,
so far
so,
away.
so yeah, the Yellowstone, there was a grizzly bear mama and her cubs. There
Aw.
were the bison, on the side of the
Hmm.
road. I think that's what they're called. Bison.
Yep,
Buffalo.
bison.
Bison? Yeah. They're
Hmm.
called buffalo somewhere else. The bison, what else do we see? Lots of elk, and out on a hike in Grand Tetons saw a moose. And it was one of those things where it's like, I'm pretty sure like we need to like stay far, far away. And I was right because moose, I think they're
Oh my
pretty
goodness.
more aggressive than you think they would be.
Right.
But yeah, so
They're
just
so tall too. Like, yeah, it's bizarre. Like
it's
I've
like your
never
instinct is to be like, wow, and like want to
yeah.
go see. It's not like a horse or like, you know, you can like go pet it. No, you have to like stay away.
Why? Why is there a why? Why is there just like let's that's so wild to me. That's so wild to me. My heart would be beating out of my chest. Like, no, I don't need to do that. Um,
Yeah, no.
I guess it's an adrenaline thing, but yeah, I
Yeah, I
would be
think it's an
terrified.
adrenal thing. Then your like rational side kicks in. It's like, actually,
Right. Oh no.
yeah,
Just
actually, no, just go ahead and back
it's like
up.
edit, edit, edit.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Have you collected any memorabilia? Am I saying that right? And
Yeah, I think it
memorabilia.
depends on memory.
Um,
Hmm.
like magnets or like, do you use the stamps like for at the visitor centers, things like that?
Yeah, so I did buy the passport book.
Yay.
Went to Zion, and every time I go to a national park, I forget it. So it remains empty.
Isn't
I
that the
I'm like,
worst?
dang it, that book is sitting in my stand. I forgot it. But I do get stickers and magnets.
Mhm.
Um, for a while, I was getting coffee mugs, and I was like, I have way too many mugs. So the mugs became the magnets. the magnets became the stickers and
Hmm.
magnets. Because I feel like I can put stickers on various things and
Hmm.
um, but yeah, for the last 5 years, I've been trying to bring a little bit of something from the parks.
Yeah. Have you collected patches at all?
No patches. I started to do the hiking sticker wrap thing, but
Oh,
again,
nice. Hmm.
yeah, the last not all
Oops,
the
sorry.
places have that. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna bring back something that all the parks will have, and they all have magnets and stickers.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I've been, yeah, definitely magnets, the postcards. I like the postcards because I
Okay.
know I can write to friends right after. And then sometimes like the like a hoodie or a t-shirt.
Okay. Yeah.
Um Sometimes the stuffed animals. Like when I went to Badlands, I'm obsessed with the black-footed ferrets, so I had to get one of
Oh,
those plush ferrets. And then definitely the passport book. I definitely want to. I feel like the first one that I got, I ended up losing it, which was like I was absolutely devastated because I put so much work into
oh
it,
no.
and for it to be lost somewhere, I don't even know to this day, but I had to start over. So I made sure that if I didn't have it, I would literally just bring a Ziploc bag and get the ones where you can like stamp the pieces of paper and just put
I've seen that at places like, did you forget your passport book? We'll stamp this piece of
right,
paper. And it's like, nah. And I'll have to keep track of the paper and remember to put
right. So I'm
it.
like,
I
you know
just
what? This works out for now. But yeah, it's stressful to have to like think about like, oh, I need to have this because
wait.
I'm so excited when I go to the visitor center. I'm like, yeah, I have a passport. Do you have a passport sticker?
That's so fun. Yeah, it's a fun part about visiting. But I have picked up recently the technical, like sleeve t-shirts.
Uh-huh.
They're more practical, like for hiking, because the
Hmm.
cotton just get too sweaty and but I've gotten a few of those. So
Yeah. So what are your go-tos for nature outings, I guess, in national parks? Is it like walking sticks? Like what's the go-to items for you?
that I bring with me or that
Mhm. That you
um
would bring with you, like for instance, for a hike. Like I have to have this if I'm doing a hike.
yeah, if I'm doing a hike, I obviously have to have a day pack.
Hmm.
With all the essentials. Bring your 10
Hmm.
essentials, people.
Yep.
Um, the sticks, the hiking sticks, I have collapsible ones, so they go with
Hmm.
me just in case I need them. Not, I don't need them all the time, but like in the Grand Canyon, you definitely need them.
Yeah.
And I remember going there. I went there and took my boyfriend, and I was like, I was supposed to do the rim to rim, and then the Phantom Ranch got closed, so it ended up being around the rim. And then my boyfriend showed up. It's like, oh, let's go back down. So I took him back
Mm-hmm.
down. It's like, where are your poles? He's like, I don't need poles. I'm like, you need poles. So he stopped, and he's like, I don't really think I need them. Like, you definitely will. You're gonna thank me
Right.
later. Yeah. So we picked up some at the visitor center, and he was like, wow, I don't know how I would have made it without these poles. So poles are a maybe, but the collapsible ones, you keep them close
Yeah.
by and you just pull them
Yeah.
out when you need them are definite. Sturdy shoes are definite because I'm always, whether it's the easy trail kind of will lead me to a harder trail. So just
Yeah.
make sure I have the right footwear. So I never show up in
Hmm.
my running shoes. I'll have
Hmm.
worst case they'll be trail runners, but best case they'll be a sturdy hiking shoe that can stand up to whatever elements are out there. But yeah, I would say those are the go-tos, try to wear breathable clothes, no cotton, nice stretchy pants, no jeans because those get uncomfortable walking around quick.
The chafing. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
pretty much no shorts because of the chafing, but yeah, just get ready for a hike like I would normally, even if I'm just gonna, walk a little
Mhm.
easy trail.
Any overnight trips you've done in a national park?
Yeah, so backpacking on the Smokies. I
Hmm.
backpacked there. That was how many nights were we out? One, two nights? Yeah, I think it was 2 night backpacking. Yosemite was 3 nights backpacking. Grand Canyon was supposed to be an overnight, but it turned into a day
Hmm.
trip. Um, where else? when I go to Acadia, I guess we'll be spending the night, but not in the park. So it'd be like
Hmm.
multi-day, but in and out.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's it. I think the other backpacking trips have been state parks. So,
Okay. Have you experienced any nature phenomena while visiting a national park?
good question. Nature phenomenon. Um, I think I was not in the park at the time, but I went to Wrangell-St. Elias in Alaska, and
Hmm.
we were definitely out of the park, but I think it was still a cool thing because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Where the salmon like go home to where
Oh
they're
yeah.
hatched, right?
Spawning.
So, it was at a hatchery, and I didn't even know what hatchery. I was like, "What's going on?"
Hmm.
I thought that that's where they like collected the fish and sold them, and it's like, no, that's where the fish go
Oh yeah, yeah. Hmm.
to like mate, I guess, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was just it's a natural phenomenon, right? Like that
Yeah.
wherever they are hatched, they will come back to um mate,
Yep.
right? And
Hmm.
so these hatcheries set this whole process up where they're kind of injecting themselves in the process
Yeah.
that's naturally happening, but to
Yeah.
see like millions of fish and what were they, sea lions, just like waiting to like
Mm.
get their meal, and then off to the side, the bears are in the woods,
Oh
like kind of
wow.
getting the leftovers. It was just like interesting just to see kind of like
Yeah.
nature kind of playing out before your eyes in a way that was completely unexpected. So not in a national park, but I was in a
Hmm.
national park the day before.
So cool. I would love to see that. Yeah, my thing is always like we had the solar eclipse cut through Ohio. So up near Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, it was the totality of the solar eclipse. So it went through part of Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I was not there, but I
Ah,
lived vicariously through some of my friends who took photos and things of that
very
nature. But
cool.
that was really cool to see a lot of the photos that people were taking, and like it went completely dark. Like
Right. I can't
you
even
don't get to
imagine that.
experience that. Yeah, and not a lot of people get to experience that in their lifetime. So it was really cool to know that it was coming through Ohio. And then like the fireflies, I think that happens at Yosemite. um and the dark sky, like there's certain parks with the dark skies where you're just seeing so many different types of um stars, and like I don't
Yeah,
know, just like
I
to be able to
saw that
see
in
that. Yeah.
Zion National Park. We went to a place that was up high, completely
Hmm.
dark, and you could see the galaxy and
Oh my goodness.
all the I forget what they're called, the different like gassy things in the sky.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was just very cool to
Yeah. Yeah, I totally would probably cry. Like I would, yeah, that person who's just like, this is really happening.
kind of
Nature is awesome. And I get to like, because you're so used to being in spaces where it's like there's so much light pollution or like noise pollution, you're just like, I don't know if I'll have that experience. But then you like when I went to Smokies and I noticed one of your photos, you were at Rainbow Falls.
Mhm.
Um, oh my goodness, it was magical. We went in December. So it was like right before it got like really crazy with the snow. It was like early December, but the night sky, oh my gosh. Like I didn't want to go back into my Airbnb. I was just like I would sleep outside because
Yeah.
stars everywhere. I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh. And they were shooting stars too. That even more like blew me away because I'm like, oh, they're just like
Yeah, when you
happening
get a clear
everywhere.
sky, it's really spectacular to see.
Yes, yes. So that's another thing that makes me want to visit more, just for those, like the blooms that happen um in California, or like I think there's rhododendron. There's like a rhododendron bloom that happens in
Okay.
the Smokies, if I'm not mistaken.
So, yeah. I don't know about
So
the
yeah, there's
firefly
lots.
thing. What was that you were talking about?
They do a lottery um every year. I want to say every year. And at least I'm recalling it's happened a couple years. Um where they do a lottery in like at a certain time in June. I think they start in like I think this month. I know it's on recreation.gov, but you can look it up.
I'll
But
Google
they
it.
do a lottery, and I think it's like $1. And then you get picked. So if you get picked, you have to pick the specific times that the phenomena is happening,
Hmm.
and like you show up, like, and you're just it's a thing. I was like, oh, so I don't remember them doing an official announcement this month. It probably has happened already. Um, but I feel like it lasts a few weeks.
Okay.
But it happens like the dates that you're scheduling, I believe, are in June, like for June.
And it's
Yeah.
just like fireflies are everywhere or something.
They're literally everywhere. Like it's a specific spot in the park where you just go and like set up camp
Oh my
or
God.
have your van or car or whatever. And yeah, they just
Watch them light up.
show up. So I'm like, oh, that's really,
That's
really
fascinating.
cool.
I had
And
never
that's
heard of that. Okay.
right. And that's such an experience because we're having so many issues with, wildlife going through habitat loss and not having what they need. So like you probably won't be able to experience these things because, they're losing habitat really fast. So um the other thing that I can recall wasn't necessarily national park related was the cicada bloom. And
Yeah.
that was,
That's
those are just like our local parks and like it was deafening when that was
same.
happening. So just like,
Same. I
whoa.
think was that last 2 years ago? 2 years ago, maybe. I think
Yep.
here.
Yeah. And there's one that happened recently. I want to say near North Carolina.
Okay.
Um, but like they have their different like
Birds that come out.
groups.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it was interesting to experience that being in a park and like that's all you hear is cicadas and you're like, I
Yeah.
can't hear myself think.
Right.
Yeah. So, what tips would you give to anyone who's interested in visiting a national park for the first time, has an interest? What would you suggest they do to get ready or to at least start thinking about before they kind of just, dive in head first?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much you can get out of the national park. Some are driving parks, some are hiking
Hmm.
parks. So I think kind of figuring out like, are you not if you're not a hiker, then like you definitely don't want to go to a hiking park because you won't get
Hmm.
much out of it. But yeah, to kind of research what the park has to offer, how big it is. We're just talking about Shenandoah
Hmm.
before the call, and Shenandoah is a very, very big park. And how much time do you have? Like a lot of factors go into how far away is it. And so having gone to the Smokies, I think
Hmm.
I've been twice now. I see why that's the most visited park
Yep.
because the lodging is so accessible. It's like literally like you leave the park and you're at your hotel.
Hmm.
Um, I think that if you've not been to a national park, that's a great one to not have to worry about how am I going to stay?
Yeah.
How far away is my hotel to the park? And then it's definitely drivable and hikeable and like walk to see things.
Hmm.
Park. But yeah, there's just a lot of factors that go into it. Doing the research on the sites is definitely a good first step just to get an idea of what the parks are that are out there. Um, some are super busy in the summertime, so it's kind of like if you don't want crowded, maybe pick one of the parks that's not as popular just to
Yeah.
get a feel for what the park has, what you can get from a national park without having to deal with massive crowds and probably high prices at
Hmm. And
California.
now reservation systems.
And reservation systems, right? Because yeah,
Mm.
that's pretty crazy because I think Zion has it.
Mm.
Like a bunch of them, yeah. If you want to see some of the iconic sites, you got to sign up in advance. So definitely,
Hmm.
it requires a lot of planning. And unfortunately, I think because of that is why we don't see as many Black people like in the
Yeah.
parks because it's hard just to show up because most of them are far away from
Yep.
it. And when you do show up, you have all these hoops you kind of have to jump into from
Yeah.
paying, get there to get into the park to like in the Smokies, I think you have to like
Mhm.
reserve your parking space if you like want to hike a trail. Like there's just so many logistical aspects to it that you can't just do it yourself in most cases. you kind of
Yeah.
have to hire someone to like help you navigate that. And that's unfortunate because then that adds to the cost, which increases the deterrent for people that are of less means that aren't getting the exposure to the national parks that
Mhm.
I would like to see happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why it's good to have this network of interviews. 'Cause have sort of like a directory to be able to reach out and connect and get more of that information with more advanced skill sets. Whether it be beginner all the way to advanced. And I always feel like it's an opportunity to learn um where people are from, like places that they're visiting, but then also like, like you were saying, just the basics, like the 10 essentials. Like a lot of people don't know these things, and it's helpful to have kind of like a starter list of things to
Yeah,
think about without feeling like, oh, I have to do this now, but like I can build on it
exactly.
as time goes on.
I lead hikes in my local area in Central Virginia, and on every hike meetup, I say what to bring, your 10 essentials.
Mhm.
And people that have been on the trip are like, well, I didn't bring my knife or I didn't bring, I was like, that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
not every hike, you don't
Right.
necessarily need all these
Yep.
things, but you need to know that you need to show up prepared.
Hmm.
And so it's
Hmm.
not unlike going to a national park. I'm starting basic with the city parks,
Yeah.
but a national park, like, show up
Right.
prepared. Like, don't just show
Mhm.
up and be like, what's next? Not having any idea of what's going
Yep.
on. And
Yeah.
so just to kind of build those little lessons from like
Yeah.
essentials is kind
Especially when there's different terrain you have to think about. Like that's where I'm like, oh, I realize that at Smokies, like a lot of those trails are like at least 10 miles.
they are, yes.
You
Yes.
are trekking through these
Trekking
places.
and they're
I don't
steep.
remember how long Rainbow Falls was, but like it wasn't long for us. We're like, we don't need to do this whole like, yeah, it was
Yeah, on that trip to the Smokies, I hiked to LeConte,
hmm
at the top and spent the night hiking
hmm
down. So it was 5 miles up, five miles down. And Rainbow
hmm
Falls isn't too much. I think it's probably shorter than that.
Yeah, yeah. So we were like, let's start with this one because that's where a lot of the water, like just
Yep.
standing next to the water was just
Yep.
absolutely beautiful. Um, but then there was like a few because I remember looking at like the map and like just looking at the map and like the trails and like how long they were. I'm like, let me just start with that. Like
Something
something
is
that's less than 5 miles.
right.
It's not like, at an incline, like you're not having to go so high up in elevation, like those kinds of things. You're just like, okay, let's start there. And then,
But there's
um,
great short hikes also. And the
yeah.
Smokies, you go to I forget what that tower is called, the lookout, but
Oh,
Clayman's
Clingman's?
Dome,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
Clayman's
Hmm.
Dome is like a paved trail up to the dome and a
Hmm.
paved trail back down. I think round trip is like a mile and a half or something.
Hmm.
And so people that are like, well, I want to get out and do something besides drive around in my car, like,
Yeah.
do your research, but
Yep.
the parks do offer shorter hikes like that. So not everyone's doing
Yeah.
backpacking or 8 miles or 10 miles. Like you can
Where it
literally
feels
start
like a
small, like just get out
Ninja
there.
Warrior challenge.
Exactly. And now you will run through the mud. It's like, what? I didn't know this was part of the national parks.
I actually took a hike. I forget the name of the trail, but it was a longer trail, but it was worth it because we wanted to go see some of the old growth trees.
Mm,
And I made sure I marked down where those were. And we were really worried because at that time, even though it was the beginning of December, there were still like parts we couldn't go to or access because of down trees and ice and stuff like that. So luckily that trail was still available for us to use and like those trees are massive. We're like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. Yeah. So that was a really fun experience just like standing by the tree and like taking the pictures and like putting your hand on like it was really cool. So I would definitely do that again. And it was quiet because like there's maybe two people on the trail. Like it
okay.
wasn't yeah. So
Mhm.
just the peacefulness of being in nature too is really comforting.
Yeah.
Um
And the trail's isolated when, it's just
yeah,
hiking by
yeah.
myself, my dog, or whoever it is. Like, it's not like a line of people trying to get somewhere.
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm. right, of like, oh, there's 50 people in front of you that you have to try to get
Whoever's there
through and like,
behind you, like, why is she
yeah,
going
it's so
so slow? It's
awkward.
like, dude, just pass me.
Right. Well, this was such a great conversation, interview. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and your experiences. If anyone is interested in connecting with you and learning more about what you do, where you adventure, things like that, can you share
Yeah,
that
sure.
information?
So on Instagram, my personal Instagram, where you can kind of follow my trips and stuff, is at Heather_Elise, Alllyse. And then the company I founded, which is creating adventure travel trips for Black minority communities, is at Happy Adventures, which is HAPBE adventures.com.
That's so cool. So, where are you looking to go next? I know you mentioned you do have a trip coming up soon, but do you have any other places that you plan to go to this year or in 2025?
That are national parks.
Hmm.
So Acadia is on my list, like I said, for next month.
Hmm.
And I do want to, I do have a few parks that I kind of want to check out. One is, I'm probably going to say this wrong. I think it's
Saguaro?
Saguaro.
Yeah,
All the
Saguaro
kids
in
yeah, so
Tucson.
I don't know. I think I was watching some nature show and they're showing all the little animals that live in that park, amongst
Hmm.
the cacti. And I was
Yes.
like, where is that? And it was like, it's Saguaro National Park. It's like, wow, that seems really cool to see that. So I don't think
Yes.
it's a super popular one, which is great. So
Hmm.
that will be on my list for the near future. I
Hey.
heard Badlands is supposed to be one of the most underrated, and not
Yeah.
super popular national parks. So I don't know if you've been, but
Yeah, I went when it was hot again. Um, don't go when it's super hot because there's no shade unless you're in the Black Hills, but like you're exposed.
right, right.
Um, or unless you're just that person who's really fascinated by the weather changes of that landscape and you want to like see the clouds rolling in or like the, rain out in the distance, like those, yeah, it's great. Um, but yeah, I would definitely make sure you have the right
Check
gear at
the
least
weather
for, yeah, the heat
in your gear.
itself. But yeah, that was a really cool because we got to connect to there's other national parks like Wind Cave,
Ah,
Mount Rushmore. There's another one I can't think of, but like they weren't far
they're
away.
close
Like
by.
you
Mhm.
literally like they're in a cluster. So those would be definitely like ones you can knock off your list as well. So the cave one was really awesome because you're really just underground. It's dark, you know. I don't know if you're claustrophobic, but like
I did go
it was
caving
pretty cool.
once. It wasn't in a national park, but it's probably one of the scariest and hardest things I've ever done. I thought it would be like, I don't know if you're familiar with Luray Caverns, which is kind of near
No.
Shenandoah. Big,
Mm-mm.
you just walk through. It's like, little school trips go. It's like, oh, I wonder if caving's like that. And it is and it isn't. Like you have to crawl and like shimmy
Oh.
and like
Oh no, you don't have to do any of that in one
yeah, it
cave.
was
That
definitely
sounds,
cool.
yeah, I don't.
It was like I'm ready for this to be over underground.
Right. But it was great because it kept us cool. Like that was another thing. Like
Okay, so you
because
got
it was so hot, we were like, oh, let's just go to Wind Cave because we don't have to worry about boiling in the heat outside.
that sounds
There's always good birds. Like when you said saguaro, I've been to Saguaro National Park. We got to see tarantulas, the cacti, all of that stuff, and then the vermilion flycatcher, which is like this vibrant red, the male. They are stunning. Um, and then yeah, just the sunsets. I remember the mountains and the sunsets. They were stunning. So, oh, and then the temperature drop. It was like 90 degrees and then it drops down to like 30, 40 degrees. So like we had to bundle up in the evening.
great. Wear your layers.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
the weather
those are
changes
the
are
ones
interesting.
that are on my curiosity list for the near
Yeah.
future.
Well, thank you for sharing. This was great. And if anyone's tuned in or is watching, feel free to share with your networks, help spread the word about my story project. We do have two more guests this week, so we'll have Ashley outdoor auntie, and she will be doing our interview on Friday, and then Saturday will be with Turquoise. I feel like in my mind there should be like one every day, but then I can't commit to that because I'm like, I know there's so many more people out there who are doing awesome
Right.
national park trips, maybe in the near future, but this was still like great to even have this many in 1 week. So I'm looking forward to Friday's conversation as well as Saturday's. And if you weren't able to watch this interview, you can watch the replay on my YouTube live channel. And again, feel free to share with your friends, family, whoever is interested in learning more about another Black person's experiences in the
Yeah,
national parks because it's amazing. It's awesome.
yeah.
Um, one more question, and I
Yes.
totally, because I was going to ask this before and I totally forgot, but hair. Is there anything specific you do with your hair when you're outdoors?
Well, it's
Because
one of
I
the
had
reasons
to pay
why.
attention to this when I went to Saguaro because it's so dry.
Okay. Well, it's one of the reasons was I got locks, so my hair is
Hmm.
locked, so that hair becomes a little bit less of an issue. So for me, it's just like moisturizing, oiling,
Hmm.
and when I'm hiking, it goes up into a back ponytail. Those
Hmm.
open caps, the bag open
Yep.
back, work great to allow the thickness to like
Hmm.
out, but have the shade over my forehead. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do, or else like a high bun with a headband if it's not sunny.
Hmm.
But to keep the hair off my shoulders. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why I went to locks 5 years ago is to have less hair issues.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yes, I realized how much I was neglecting my hair after that saguaro trip. This is just,
Yeah, because your hair can dry out, especially when you're out
it
west.
was so bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was like having conversations with my hair, like, I am gonna get you back
You braid it down. What did you
to
do?
where it needs to be because it was brutal. Yeah. But yeah, that's really helpful advice. So thank you all again. This was great.
It's a pleasure.
I
Thanks so much
appreciate
for
you,
having
Heather,
me. Okay.
and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.